With the size of our faction champion index growing, and of course, as we begin to expose ourselves to new abilities and new legendaries, this is a great time for us to kind of pause just a little bit and take a look at rare champions. So, what I would like to do, I did a series previously on uncommon and common champions in every faction. And since then, of course, we've moved up levels and also had a chance to kind of play around with rare and epic champions that can be considered to be game changers. And so I wanted to just go through, kind of look at some of the champions I've had a chance to work with, give a little, maybe synopsis, a couple of ideas of how I've worked with them so far. And of course, I would love to hear from you guys as well. So let's get started. Very first thing is Banner Lords. Banner Lords, it's one of those factions where I often use the majority of these champions as food. Now, there are some hard hitters within this group, but it also depends on, of course, where your account is and how you are pushing your account. And some of these champions I've definitely had a chance to pull. So, probably the first one that comes to mind, many of you guys have pulled the crossbowman. The crossbowman for me is one of those champions that has not made the list of people to vault or to build with only 39 reviews, and they kind of speak the same thing. This guy is just screaming food for me. Looking at his skill level, attacks one enemy is going to be huge for this particular faction. And so keeping in mind the amount of damage that a champion is able to do, and also looking at their base stats will probably help you quite a bit when trying to decide whether to vault, build, or sacrifice. Now, I will say he doesn't have the lowest speed that I've seen, but he's a rare. So, snapshots, he's going to hit that one enemy. He has a 15% chance of placing an extra hit. You've come against this guy actually before. Sharp Eye, he's going to place a 30% increased crit rate buff on a target for 2 turns and grants an extra turn. And this can be placed on a 3-turn cooldown. Last but not least, Blunted Arrow attacks one enemy and has a 50% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. Also has a 50% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. So his kit, honestly, for a rare, isn't horrible. Now, I will say this 5-turn cooldown is quite disrespectful, but overall, you get a 3-turn, which is kind of standard. You can increase damage by 20% with a 15% chance. That would be nice if it was a little bit higher. Um, yeah, no. Unless you are just building this guy out to kind of fill in your collection. Maybe if you are running through faction wars and you're kind of, really needy in this area, but mostly for Banner Lords, you should be pulling some pretty decent champions early on. Now, I've seen videos done about Valerie. I've actually pulled her a couple of times. She has really strong ratings pretty much across the board, except for Hydra and Iron Twins. And I'll be honest, normally the only reason I don't keep Valerie and I have not built her just yet is because of the other types of champions that I normally have on the account and where I am. Her swing is pretty simple. It's going to attack one enemy, and of course, damage can be increased by 20%. She has energizing presence, which increases the duration of all buffs on all allies for 1 turn, and this can be placed on a 3-turn cooldown. I will say, out of the people, those creators that I listen to, this is the number one skill that they build her for. So if you think about it, if you have champions, and I kind of think of some of my poison dealers, damage dealers, a couple of my, like Roscar the Towers, another one that comes to mind. They're throwing shields. They throw them on a regular basis. You have a couple of, other ones with buffs. And if you can make that last, or if you can make a shield last for an extra turn, think about how many battles you would actually slide in and grab a victory just because you have that extra opportunity. So I can definitely see why for the second skill, this would be pretty tempting. Protect is going to be third skill, places a shield buff on all allies for 2 turns. The value of the shield depends on this champion's level. Heals each ally according to the number of buffs they are currently under. So depending on where you are in the game, who you're facing, this can be pretty helpful. That shield strength can be increased by 20% as well. The only downfall is the cooldown times. So the cooldown times for her are going to be kind of long, kind of lengthy. And of course, has an aura, increases ally HP, and faction crips by 22%. Valerie is definitely one I would eventually build. Her base speed is at 98, so not bad at all. So I mean, buildable, but it's not something that I'm going to rush to do because at this point in the game, unless you pulled her pretty early, you probably have a champion that can fill the gap. I am loving this second skill, especially on the 3-turn cooldown. I would love to see this drop down to even a 3, even a 4 would be a little bit better because this can be pretty helpful. But I can definitely see where in a support situation, maybe in faction crypt, she would be helpful as well. I have pulled Grandmaster. I have never built Grandmaster. He has always ended up being food for me, which the reviews are kind of supporting as well. They're all going to be, of course, he's an attack based champion, has a 25% chance of decreasing attack debuff, and then has a provoke. So, not very, life changing. HP increases by 17%. Um, if I have to pick, he's not going to make it. He never has. He's just one of those champions. I think that unless it's really early on and you're just trying to fill in a slot, he's not going to be your guy. This guy I pull all the time, Myrmidon. Myrmidon I have pulled. Oh, at this point, I can't even think of how many times. And his ratings are pretty good across the board. Weakest area is going to be in Hydra. It's the number of books. I have probably sacrificed him every single time. And it's usually because of this. This is like, oh, encyclopedia level. Like, wow. Attacks one enemy. He does have a provoke. He's a defensive champion. So it is easier to keep him alive, which is always, always a plus. On that second skill, he has attacks all enemies. 60% chance of placing a 25% decreased attack, which is really nice. But we are now up to 17 books. Just it's going and going. And the second skill is also on a 4-turn cooldown. You can bring it down to a 3. So kind of like it. But here in the mix, places a 50% ally protection buff on all allies for 2 turns. Pretty helpful. Places a 15% continuous heal. And this is kind of where he is outdone. At this point, on most of my accounts, I have several champions that will throw out the continuous heal. And if you don't have a champion that does this, it can be placed on a 4-turn cooldown. I know for a lot of people, it's this third skill that is a reason for them to push to build him if they need help in dungeons, because this is something actually I don't have very often, is someone with the aura that is specifically dungeon related. I don't know, what it is, or either I have a champion that has it that may not be fully built out. But again, it's the books. It is the books for me. So Myrmidon can be a potential. He's not going to be a rush. I would definitely not 6-star this champion. I don't even know, honestly, if I would 5-star this champion. Maybe in faction crypts, depending on your team, because some factions I pull from at a much lower rate than others, but he's not going to hit the top of my list. All right, Misery Cord. Misery Cord, I have only pulled, I think, once. Not a lot of reviews on this champion, though they're pretty solid across the board, except for Iron Twins and Hydra. I'm not shocked by the attacks one enemy 2 times. It's going to have that decreased speed. Attacks all enemies, which is a lot more interesting. Does fill the turn meter by 5% for each living enemy. Fills his champion's meter by 5% for each living enemy. She's not the hardest hitter. Now, if this was placed on some of your nukers, and that was maybe a 15 or a 25%, I'll take 5 though if it stacks. But she's another one, places a counterattack buff, 25% increase attack on a 4-turn cooldown. The cooldown bothers me. She doesn't require a lot of books. I would like to see, this could be on a 3 turn cooldown. That 15% is kind of interesting, but Misericord is one of those. She's not going to be a rush to build. Not necessarily would I vault her either. The skills she's giving, I can definitely get somewhere else. Preserver is another one I pulled several times. She can be solid in several areas. And what you're going to notice across the board, rare champions, of course, tend to have a lot more reviews just across the board of showing this is one of those champions that I can use in so many different areas. As you move in and start pulling more legendaries and epic champions, you will notice that in certain areas, you're not using the same team across the board. I've definitely gotten a lot better about who I prefer where in the game. I've learned that when I become stuck at a particular area to kind of stop, go back and take a look at that boss, take a look at their skill level in particular, and really try to focus on, what's needed in order to get past that particular stage. Preserver is one I've seen her use in a few different ways. She's not going to make my top 5 or 10 list of rares. I just, really got excited over. She does attack one enemy 2 times with the decreased speed, just like our previous champion. Now, Recuperate is one that some people need team wise, places that 7.5% continuous heal buff and a shield buff on this champion for 2 turns. And the fact that it's on her is kind of the thing. The value of the shield is proportional to this champion's max HP. So Recuperate, if she's throwing out enough damage for you, can be a nice one. She's going to be a little bit more protective of herself. That can be placed on a 3 turn cooldown. That shield can be also be increased by 10%. But I don't need the selfishness the way my teams are currently built. Last but not least, she comes in with a freeze on a 4 turn cooldown. Not the most impressive. Increases ally HP in all battles by 17%, guys, to be honest. Once you hit probably level 20 and up, you're going to start hitting champions that will increase it by 33%. So Preserver for me still falls into the no category. Courtier. Courtier is one I have not pulled. It's kind of a give me. Probably has a pretty niche little kit, attack-based champion. Outmaneuver, you're looking at increasing the damage on this by 25%. Attacks one enemy, is going to place that freeze debuff. It's going to come back with attack one enemy 3 times, 30% chance of removing a random buff from a target. That's going to be on a 3 turn cooldown, and then has decreased speed on a 4 turn cooldown, but does attack all enemies 2 times. Not bad, not life changing, not a rare that I think I would just run out. Bombarder is another one. Gosh, if you have not pulled this guy a million times and guessed the reviews, speak the truth. Bombarder is automatic food for me. He does increase the duration of debuffs, can be helpful. It has the increased speed, attacks one enemy, placing a 2.5% poison. This weak version is just 3 turn cooldown, not impressed. Increases ally crit rate by 12%, so you can do better. So Bombarder is another one for me. And for this faction to have so many rares, honestly, I really expected more of them to hit a lot better. I'm guessing this is Accusator. Ugh, I'm not loving the armor or the shade. Not. Ew. Okay, this one is not hitting the top of the aesthetic list, nor do the players appear to be very impressed with his kits. I don't have experience with this particular guy. They attack one enemy, inflicts 30% extra crit damage if this champion has less than 50%, which they're normally dead by then. Increase, crit damage buff on all allies for 2 turns. Hits with the books, 4 turn cooldown on depletion. So single hitter, it takes a lot for a single hitter to be impressive. And this guy definitely does not hit the list of impressive. Now let's pause for a second. I'm not sure how long Spy Master has actually been in the game, but I will tell you guys this, and I wholeheartedly agree with these ratings. Spy Master has a little smack. He does. He really, really does. I pulled this guy during maybe CBC, the most recent CBCs, one of my shard pools, trying to get points, and Outcome Spy Master. Had not heard about him. I actually plan on doing an in-depth video on this character because I'm pretty intrigued with him. I think I've managed to get him to 4-star perhaps. Base speed is 97. Not bad at all. I'll be honest, is a lot higher than some. Crit damage, 50%, base HP 19,650, not bad. He does attack one enemy with Spy Master's Blade, has a 40% chance of decreasing the duration of 2 random buffs on the target by 1 turn. He's HP damage based. So you have to be mindful because these guys can be kind of tricky, a little squishy on the build. So I do focus on getting HP up, defense, but I also want to increase speed. Buff debuff chances can be increased by 20%. Damage can be increased by 15%. So first attack, not very impressed with, but I love directed sabotage. Oh, and don't think I skipped it. The books. Spy Master in these books. I haven't decided if he's going to be worth fully booking out yet, but I can say he's definitely been worth, trying to get to a 5-star with. I will give him that. Undirected sabotage, second attack. This guy has attack all enemies. You guys know how I feel. On a 4-turn cooldown, which it was 3 Plarium, has a 50% chance of placing a block buff debuff for 2 turns. This attack tends to do a nice amount of damage. I'm not sure about the multipliers on him. I will say just experience from running him in a couple of dungeons, especially in campaign. He's done pretty well for me. He has done pretty well. I've run him in a revive set. I've run him in a cruel set. I think there's one more, but he's interesting. And some champions, some rares you build give you the feeling they can have some mid-game values, which is kind of what I'm looking for right now, early and late mid-game value. But I like him in particular areas. And I'm really loving the numbers that he puts out. He can definitely put out numbers like Deliana. I've gotten that from him. And she's 6-star on one of my accounts. He gives me not Talia, like a nicely built Hakatoon is another one that comes to mind. So he can put out a little damage. Now, Cloak and Dagger places a counterattack buff on this champion for 2 turns. Has a 75% chance of placing a provoke. You can bring that 75 on up to a 100% chance there. For 1 turn on 2 random enemies. Get this on a 5-turn cooldown. I think the cooldowns with him is a big one. The number of books you start with doesn't really wrap your heart. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 plus 5, 11. You're still looking, 12, 13 books in. It can be, it's a little intensive, but this is a guy, if you pull him, I highly recommend you pause for a second and just run him. Just nicely run my guy, see how he feels. If anybody else is currently running him on a team, let me know who you're running him with and what you think about him so far. So that's Spy Master. Okay, cataphract. I'm gonna go with the pronunciation. This guy has never made it past the food stage for me. Not builds, don't even think about it. Sure strike. He has a decreased accuracy, comes back with a block debuffs, increased defense on a 3-turn cooldown. Attacks one enemy. This is based on his attack and HP. Ignores defense. Comes in with an aura for arena, 25%. Guys, I don't focus on arena auras honestly at all. It's the least important. I think it's one of the most limiting auras. It really puts champions sometimes in an area where they should be niche and they are not. I've built so many teams and I end up using some of the most random compilations of champions within arena just to kind of get a feel for how they are, because sometimes you really don't know the abilities of your champion until you can put a set team around them, run them in arena, and kind of compare the amount of damage and the performance you're getting out of them. And this guy for me is going to be a no. We are still in Bannerlords. Wow. All right. So Conqueror is another one. Nope. I pulled this guy a few times. He's kind of a half and half, I guess, and keeps, wars, couple of campaign areas. So comes with that attack one enemy 2 times. Still comes back as a single attack, removing 2 random buffs. Attacks one enemy. Enemies killed by this skill cannot be revived. Armor has the same. And then increase ally attack in battles by 18%. I've definitely seen that in the 30s. So for me, Conqueror is not vaultable, not buildable. Now, here's another guy. I'm not sure if he's been in the game long. Whew. Iron Twins, Hydra, and Faction Crips. I don't know if his ratings are so low because he's not highly reviewed. Excuse me, not highly reviewed, or if it is the fact that I don't know. Is it Halliburter? Let's go with Hal. Good old Hal. I have pulled. I actually started just running him on a team to kind of see what he would do because he had the weekend at the time that you can increase that by 25%, get that up to 50 overall. He also has Bisect, which ignores shield and block damage buffs. I mean, his base attack 1178 is not bad. Increases crit damage by 40%, which honestly, Cleveland Axe is one thing that I liked. Um, so his passive kind of touched me a little bit. Secondly, you can get this to a 3-turn cooldown. The fact you can increase that damage by 20%, depending on how you build him out. If you are in faction crit, which I think is when I actually put some gear on him and used him just a little bit, he can actually post numbers for you because he is an attack champion. Normally, defense isn't that good, but he's at 1,046. He's not the slowest champion, sitting at 97, and that crit damage is already posted to 57%. So not bad. We're looking at Ascendant, Blessed, and all, but this champion in particular, am I going to rush to build him? No. Would I vault him for later? Probably. And I believe that's what I did with them. Built him, ran him in Faction Crypt, and then Faction Wars, and then I actually vaulted him for later. All right, Chevalier. This is another one. I pulled this guy on a couple of occasions. He has solid reviews across the board. I've had a chance to run him a few times. He does do block damage and throws out the shield buff, which can be increased by 25%. He also does, it's always the attack one enemy. Throws out the stun, which at this point I have a couple of champions that do the same, but on a 3-turn cooldown. Lord Protector, we're going for that continuous heal. Remember, I told you guys, once you start hitting level 20, 30, 40, you're going to pull several champions just because of the number of tournaments and events that most players start going through. So you're going to have champions that have that continuous heal. There are so many support champions before you start thinking to, build out a defense champion solely for this purpose. You definitely want to look into those first. Now, the good thing is, if he is a defensive-based champion, it's nice that they can help keep your team alive. And they're also throwing that additional to help support your support champion. So something to think about when you're building different teams for different purposes. But you will see counterattack. You will definitely see that continuous heal as well. Ally defense and faction crypts by 19%. So he has the weak version of a couple of skills. Honestly, you guys should have an epic champion or two that are able to kind of combine into the same, if not carry out the same on their own. So Chevalier for me is not an immediate build and not necessarily vaultable. Vanguard. Vanguard is another one. Whew, the reviews are not misleading. He's a defense-based champion. Attack is a lot lower than my previous guy. Crit rate, crit damage are in the range of the same, a little bit slower. He does throw out the decreased defense. Also has a provoke on that second skill. Passive decreases duration of all buffs on the attacker when hit. So still just a single attacker. You've got to come in with a little something more. Even the aura is not the most impressive, especially when you are only attacking one enemy at a time. So Vanguard is a no for me. Steadfast Marshal, I do not know this guy. I do not. It's only 87 reviews. Whew. The love is not there for Steadfast. The love is not there. So this guy is coming with a provoke Provoke is one of those, unless you are giving me skills of transferring damage, putting me in the mind of someone like Burgess, putting me in the mind of someone like Ultimate Death Knight, unless you're one of those champions where you are absorbing, even if it's, a multiple attack skill, you're absorbing that or a percentage of that damage from all of your allies. It's not the most impressive skill for me right now. Places a 60% increased defense buff on this champion for 2 turns. It would have been great if it was placed on all champions. That would have actually been pretty impressive. Places a veil on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. So this skill, Covered Retreat, can be placed on a 3-turn cooldown. If you have a healer or other support champion on your team, this can definitely give them the opportunity and the number of turns needed to kind of heal and get a couple of shields out there as well. His HP isn't bad at all. Speed, I wish was a little bit higher. Crit rate, crit damage is pretty much the same across this faction for rares too. He would not be an immediate build for me. Honestly, he's barely vaultable. I'm really interested in the Covered Retreat, probably for certain teams. Maybe even Hold Fast, so you can put it on a 3-turn cooldown. He wouldn't be hard to book. So that's probably another one because Thunderous Wallop only uses 4 books. So maybe save him for later, but he would not be an area for me to rush to. Dagger. Dagger is one I have pulled before, has pretty solid numbers across the board, but I have not built this champion out. So Dagger is an attack-based champion, comes with the attack one enemy 2 times, does decrease the target's turn meter by 4%. Also has on the second skill, attacks all enemies, 50% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. You can place that one on a 3-turn cooldown. And then Sword Break Knife, where attacks one enemy, has a 50% chance of placing a 25% decreased attack, 50% decreased attack debuff, and or instead, if the target is under a decreased defense debuff. So there are some options in there. You can place the skill on a 3-turn cooldown. Faction Crips increased by 20%. Dagger can be a solid choice, not an immediate build. I'm not sure I would, I don't even think I would 6-star her, but maybe Valter for later. She is a void champion, so I tend to try to hold on, or I think about holding on to those. Maybe when I kind of settle my accounts with champions that I can certainly let go of, which is a problem I have now. Dagger would maybe be safe for later, but not an immediate build. So that's going to finish us up when it comes to Better Lords. Gosh, there are quite a few of them. So they have a nice little set. Probably most impressed with Valerie, Spy Master. Even Halberder is maybe one. Steadfast Marshal was the interesting one we weren't sure about. Vanguard. So a few in there you guys probably have some good experience with. But High Elves is going to be the next area that a lot of us have pulled these champions. We very much so are used to them. First up, it's going to be Apothecary. You guys know I did a recent video on Apothecary and always had solid reviews. I've seen so many videos about this champion. I have him. I have 5-starred him. Honestly, once before, I used him as food. I know. But I pulled him again. I did pull him again, and I kept him. I built him out. So, hey, um, I am still trying to find the beauty in this champion. And I think only because it's not his skill set. I do have to respect the fact that this is a rare support champion. So your expectations should definitely be a little bit different. But the attacks 3 times at random can be nice. You can increase the damage by 25%. Heals a target ally by 35%. This heal can be critical, which is nice on a 2-turn cooldown. You can also increase that heal, up to 50% of HP. So not bad. Increased speed is a nice one to have. This can also be placed on a 3-turn cooldown. Makes him a pretty solid champion. And the aura of 21% in dungeons for a rare champion is not bad at all. So this is a champion I've held on to. I think it's more so the teams that I'm currently building that don't always give him a chance to shine the way I want. But I definitely know in Doom Tower, he's a champion that will get used. There are a couple other areas that may be rare only when they run special events. I definitely lean back on Apothecary. Avenger is another one that I have actually, she's campaign farmable. So I picked her up a few times. I have never built her beyond, I think, 4 stars. So, I mean, she does attack one enemy, has a decreased defense. Also, on a 2-turn cooldown, Lethal Vortex attacks at random 2 times, has an extra 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit. It's all the single attacks. I think that's what keeps me away from her, even though it can be critical. Damage from this can be increased by 20%, but that 5-turn cooldown is absolutely horrible. And in Faction Crips, it's only 17%. This leaves Avenger on the list for food for me. Elhain, you guys know. If you don't, you will know. Elhain is a solid starter champion. If you've never started an account with her, I definitely recommend you go back and start an account, honestly, with each of the rares. I think they all have something really great that they bring to the table. This young lady here can be a nuker if you build her that way. Her extra hit can be critical and very often is. That damage increase of 25% is nice for keen shots. Coming back with lightning arrow, this one increases crit rate. It can be pretty nice. I'll be honest. On a 4-turn cooldown, parts of me wish it was a 3, but the increase of damage is nice by that 20%. This champion is one that's not hard for you to book out, especially if you are early game. Guys, you're going to come into contact with more rare books than you will probably than I've come across since. And that's someone who's almost at level 60 on my first account. So early game, if you're going to book something out, your starter champion is probably a really great option. Her Valley of Death is where the smack comes in. Attacks all enemies 2 times. I have seen this put out some massive damage. Looking at this overall, looking at an increase in damage of 25%. The cooldown, I won't complain about. She also has an aura for HP by 15%. Solid champion. I would definitely book her. I would book her out. I would go ahead and master her as well. Guys, Elhain as well as Dark Elhain are 2 champions that are certainly worth it. Adjudicator. Adjudicator is another one. Recently did a video on this champion. And I'll be honest, her numbers are kind of all over the place. She is not going to be an ultimate game changer. She doesn't replace Sniper for me. But I'll be honest, Adjudicator can put in a little damage. She attacks one enemy. She does have that 50% heal reduction debuff for 2 turns, which is kind of nice on that first skill. Slowing Sanction is going to be her second one. Has a 50% chance of decreasing the turn meter by 20%. And this can be placed on a 3-turn cooldown. This, depending on the other champions on your team, can be pretty helpful. And she's attack based. So, third skill, penalize. We're going to attack 2 times at random. Has a 50% chance of increasing the cooldown of one of the target skills by 1 turn at random. It's the randomness on this third skill that kind of dampens it for me. You can only bring it down to a 4-turn cooldown, so that's a second strike for me. I think most of her damage, honestly, is coming between the first and the second skill, is what I've kind of noticed as I played with her. Increased accuracy in arena by 40. You guys know those arena auras are not impressive for me. Adjudicator for me, I will take her at a 5-star. Only because I pulled her, I think, right, maybe the second or third champion on my account. I had Sniper as well. I ran them together until I got Ultimate Death Knight. And I want to say on that account, I started with Elhain. So one of those champions, do I think she's going to take you mid-game? No. No, I'm pretty sure. Absolutely not. Is it easy to 5-star her? Yes, she can definitely do the damage and provide enough support and help with your team until you acquire better champions. An immediate build, no. Vaultable, perhaps. She's not the worst. And if I am running through rares and looking for particular skills, she's definitely a maybe. Eris, I have pulled Eris a couple of times. She's going to fall into that group of she can be a pretty niche kind of champion. A lot of people love her for Spider. I built her out and used her in a couple of areas. On this first skill for Bullseye, she's going to attack that one enemy. Does really good with the extra turn, increasing damage by 20%. She's not really book heavy, which I appreciate. Even her buff debuff chances can be improved up to 100%. This is where this becomes really, really helpful. So exhortation removes one random debuff from all allies, has a 100% chance of placing a 30% increased speed. Well, no, has a 60% chance of placing a 30% increased speed, and that buff debuff chance, can be improved by 40%. Duh. On all allies for 2 turns. A lot of people love her for that particular skill. Her passive is also kind of nice, counterattacks the attacker when an ally is attacked. I like this one. She does a nice amount of damage with her, and she also provides a little extra speed boost when in dungeons by 16%. So for my girl Eris, that one can come in handy. Oh, Apothecary's brother, Magister. Magister is actually one, I'll be honest, I was pretty shocked. I like the reviews. Honestly, I agree with the reviews. And I know I'm about to say this, and there are some people across the board who are going to come for me. I fully understand that skill wise, Apothecary is held in esteem. Like that guy is loved. He comes across as like, I don't know if he's a younger brother or older brother or whatever, but oh my gosh. But I'll be honest, on my free to play account, on one of my free to play accounts, I prefer Magister. I know. I know. The room is rumbling, it is spinning, but this guy does a little something. I give it to him. So, Majestic Staff attacks one enemy. If it's critical, places a 25% increase attack buff on a random ally for 1 turn. Places a revive on death buff and a 30% reflect damage buff on a target ally for 2 turns. This can be helpful. Heals all other allies by 10%. And of course, you can increase that heal by 30, so get it up to 40%. Wishes was on a 3-turn cooldown. That would be pretty nice. But the way he places with Anoint, the revive on death, is pretty helpful. I've been using him between level 45 up to 56. So what's that, like early mid game, I guess. But this guy, I'll be honest, support wise, he's kind of nice. Like he doesn't give, like the heal is not gonna like change your world. But if you have a team that needs a little extra push, especially toward the end of longer battles, this guy is kind of nice. Magister does the job for me. Increases ally HP and faction crypts by 22%. So the aura is pretty helpful as well. I will definitely build this guy. I plan on taking him to a 5-star and then reevaluate. I may even take him to 6. But right now, he's definitely going to go to 5-star. If you're not going to build him, I recommend at least saving 1 copy of him, vaulting it for later. And when you have the time and the resources, book them out and just kind of see how you feel. Fencer. Fencer is one I built before. I'll be honest. I have built my girl before. She has nice reviews, pretty nice reviews, except for Hydra and Iron Twins. Fencer has a decreased speed. She does love the books. My girl is in the library pretty often. Pommel is another one with the stun, which is kind of nice. But it is on a 4-turn cooldown, which is one of the drawbacks. Second drawbacks is the number of library books that my girl is going through. She does have decreased defense as well. And then we have the ally attack in dungeons by 23%. Fencer is one of those rares. Not hard to build out at all, does a decent amount of damage. Her attack is sitting at 1211, so her speed is 100. Can't complain there. The number one, probably 2 things that bother me, you guys already know. The number of books is atrocious. We're looking at, what is this, 14? Whew, wow. Yeah, 23 book, like 20 plus books. A little much for a rare. I like all that she does. I can definitely say that. I wish some of, especially for the second attack, love Pommel, but the 4-turn, come on, give my girl a 3. You know, her aesthetic is not given, not given, but she is she's a champion. I have 4-star. I think I've even gone so far as to 5-star her. She's okay. You could always vault her if you have a niche kind of situation. I've used Spencer as well as food, so not really attached to this particular champion. She's not the worst, not the best. So this one I'll leave up to you guys, just depending on where your account is. Haria, I have never built this champion out. Every time I pull her, which she seems solid in the keeps, I've always used my girl as food. Honestly, always. Attacks one enemy, has a 25% chance of inflicting a critical hit. We've seen that one. Placing that 5% poison debuff if you have a Kale. Attacks one enemy with two random allies. Allies join the attack, use their default skills on a 4-turn cooldown. And then in the arena by 16%. So no, my girl is food for me. Prosecutor is another one. I pulled her, actually have not built her, was not very impressed with the kits, attacking one enemy 2 times, decreasing the turn meter by 10%. Attacks all enemies, 50% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed. Could be nice, but that skill is actually on a 3-turn cooldown. I've seen it with other champions. And of course, increased accuracy. Each hit has a 30% chance of placing a 100% heal reduction debuff. So this is one of those champions. Kit is not horrible for a rare, but the problem is you probably have other champions that do the same. And there will be no reason to have those skills doubled up at that point. So prosecutor is a no. My girl Medicus, guys, I cannot believe she only has 23 reviews. Wow. Wow. I pulled Medicus during CVC. So did not know a lot about this champion, had not heard, honestly, anything about Medicus. And I had to come in and do a video on my girl. Man, Medicus can, guys, Medicus can smack. I will give her that. Her speed at 106, hey, I will take it all day. Attacks one enemy 2 times. Dual scalpel has a nice little edge to it, but it is restraints. This second attack, which can be placed on a 3-turn cooldown, attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of placing a 15% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. And the damage. The damage makes me sing. It is there. It is there. Now, Stimulant Elixir is another one, places a 30% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. Also places a 15% buff on this champion for 2 turns. You can get this down to a 3-turn cooldown. I so appreciate them for this. So her kits, I do appreciate. I've been using her early game so far on one of my free to play. Will she make it forever in my account? No, but this is one I could definitely 5-star her. And so far, I do not have a single regret. So Medicus is one of those. If you want to take it to 5 stars, she can be pretty interesting. I would definitely not use her as food. I would at least vault her. And hey, maybe you'll build her a little bit later. Interceptor, I pulled my girl a couple of times. Yes, the ratings are not deceiving. She does nothing. It's not going to happen. It's a no-go for me, babe. So defense base, decreased speed is going to be on that first attack, coming with a sleep weaken, and if not, another sleep debuff. Yeah, sleep and weaken. Weaken is nice. 15%. I wish it was a little bit better. You can get it to 20%. This skill can be placed on a 5-turn cooldown, so that just absolutely knocked her out the park for me. And of course, third skill decreases the turn meter of all enemies by 15%. That can be placed on a 5-turn cooldown. Cooldown is too long. The amount of damage she does is not impressive. So Interceptor for me is food. Reliquary Tender. I just pulled this champion. Pulling this champion, my gosh, it's kind of like pulling for Cold Heart. Everyone talks about Cold Heart. I've never pulled her before. I've always wanted to pull her. I have multiple accounts, still nothing. But when I pull Reliquary Tender, I wish it was on my main account, but it was not. This champion is a nice one. I wasn't sure at first when I started building her. She kind of gave me apothecary feels. I knew she had it in her somewhere. I wasn't worried about her in arena. More so looking so I could finish progression in some of the keeps as well as campaign. And so I was also hoping to pull her in case I needed a little bit of support as far as faction crypt. Faction Wars was another one that was kind of coming to my mind. And so I'm feeling a girl, but man, this baby has a truly active library card. Guys, do y'all see this? 8 books. 8. Warden staff attacks one enemy, 20% chance of placing a 25% decrease attack debuff for 2 turns. You can increase that debuff chance by 30%. And I can't help but laugh. Oh my God, the number of books. Reliquary Tender is breathtaking with the books. I'm so glad they trim it down because by the time you get to the second skill, it's like, oh my gosh, how many books can one child eat through? So Tender's Watch can come down to a 3-turn cooldown, removes all debuffs from all allies. This is kind of nice. Then places a 15% continuous heal buff on them for 2 turns. Remember, I told you guys, there are a couple of rares now that carry the continuous heal. And so when you're going through and trying to figure out which rares to keep, which ones you're willing to sacrifice, don't let that continuous heal throw you off. Her third skill is another one, revives an ally with 30% HP, fills the turn meter by 30% on a 5-turn cooldown. I don't know a lot of rares that revive. And I'll be honest, if you have not started Doom Tower, I would highly recommend that you 6-star Reliquary Tender and hold on to my girl. I plan on fully mastering her out as well. Guys, there are some rare rooms in Doom Tower that are just absolutely disrespectful. Like they are so hard. Like bringing in Ice Golem kind of damage times 2. It's a big one, but she is definitely bookable, definitely buildable. So if you don't have the time, the resources, vault her for later. But this one is an immediate build for me. Aristocrats brings us to the uncommons. So we managed to make it through on High Elves and Banner Lords. Trying to think, should we just race through? Or do you guys want to cut it at 2? We'll maybe do 2 per motion. We'll stop it there. So we'll stop at Battle Lords and High Elves. I'll pick up guys with Sacred Order and the Barbarians in the next video. If you have stuck around with me for this long, I am loving you. If you're looking for a clan, we may have some slots coming available soon. So make sure you're typing in 22WK, checking with us on a regular basis. CBC, the next one coming up should be in about a week or so. We are 2-0. We've done very good as far as our competitions, but it's time for us to kind of buckle down, get resources together, and hey, let me know what you think about the rare champions we were able to go through. Have you built any of these champions in particular? Did I sleep on some? Did I snub some of your favorite champions? I definitely would love to know. This is your girl, Wicked Raider 22. As always, you guys keep gaming. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will talk to you soon.